helps when everything just works. Today's not that day.
No. Well, now we're streaming the.
Yeah. Exactly.
It's fun times. I want this to be
Good
on the
morning,
YouTube.
good afternoon, good evening, everyone. Welcome to OpenShift TV. I am Chris Short. I have been running this train wreck all day. Thank you for enduring it. It's not been a great day for whatever reason. I'm missing buttons and misstepping every once in a while. So the last stream I installed an extension and it popped up on the screen behind me. It was just ruined the whole thing. So yeah, that's a super fun day so far. So here we are. We're going to actually get together with two of my favorite coworkers. Like we're on the same team, Christian Hernandez and Andrew Sullivan. Please introduce yourselves. We'll start with Andrew since he is, Andrew.
Well, I feel privileged now, even though I'm not the star of the show I'm not the star of the show today. It's definitely Christian. Anyways, Andrew Sullivan, technical marketing manager, focusing on a little bit of everything that's not developer related.
Yeah, Christian Hernandez, also a technical marketing manager. You know me as a helper node guy, infrastructure node guy.
I know you as a
GitOps guy. Yeah. Not so much a vSphere guy, but I'm going to be driving today, so that's why I invited Andrew here to kind of help me along here, just in case I have questions. And yeah.
Always handy to have Andrew along for the vSphere stuff.
Yeah. It's always anytime talking about virtualization or storage is always handy to have Andrew around. You can always
steer straight.
Oh no! Now you're setting expectations that I know.
Yeah. Setting high expectations of Andrew. In other streams, we were I've always been talking about infrastructure nodes. And how to get infrastructure nodes installed on various platforms. I think the last one we did it on AWS. I think I did it with Jafar. And the questions have been coming up about how to do this on vSphere, right? So, I thought even though it's a similar process, I thought it'd be nice to get a stream together and do kind of a how-to install infrastructure nodes on a vSphere IPI install. So I'm going to do sort of a kind of similar to what I did with AWS. I'm going to do how to do it like on an already existing running cluster, and then two, how to do it on at install, right? Because you can actually just do it on install. Even though it's IPI, you can do a lot of things pre-install here. So hopefully I share the right screen.
Oh boy.
I did test
the magic green button.
Yeah, the magic green button. I did test the screen sharing because you asked me to, Chris. So,
well, Zoom has dropped like 2 updates this week. So I know for our Fedora users, I am one of you. That usually leads to problems. So
yeah. So do y'all see my screen here?
Yeah.
All right. Looks
my
good.
ugly mug along with Brian Tanis's very clean face.
Oh look, so like we have a picture of Ryan there. He's on the chat. I see. So he's on the
Yeah. Actually, if you click that OpenShift Twitch channel, there should be a Twitch it just add /Twitch to the end of this URL.
Streaming /Twitch.
Yeah, /Twitch. Just do streaming /Twitch. And
are you gonna create Inception? Are we gonna
boom, Inception happening? There we go. Yeah.
Okay. So I didn't even know that.
Catch up with us. Right. So this is a new landing page that Dan Russo set up for us. Thank you so much, Dan. But you can actually see, just go to our website. Boom. There's our live stream right there. You want to interact with it? Click it. Bam. Off you go. So yeah, pretty cool.
Well, that's good
to showing that off for us.
Yeah. It's good to see that it doesn't look too bad. So cool. And that I'm sharing the right screen. So that's that's a good indication there. Cool. So I have so first let me log into my vSphere environment here. So administrator vSphere.local, whatever this guy is, right? So
Hunter 2
Sphere, here we go.
Yeah, there we go. Password 123. And so I have an OpenShift install already here in this folder. I got 3 masters and 3 workers. This is the one that's already up and running. So we're going to add infra nodes to this eventually, but I'm going to kind of go through the install process first, and to show how you can do it before install, right? Or during install, I guess as a day 0, day 1. I don't know, you would call this here.
If it's during install, 0, right?
Yeah.
Right?
Here I'm looking at the temperature. Yeah, day 0.
Day 0.
So, actually, let me do some cleanup here.
Just throw an ish after everything, and it's all good.
Yeah. CD Twitch. Okay, so I'm in my working directory here. So, so I do have OC. Was it cluster info? There we go. So I am running a service here on OpenShift 4, right, domain. So I'm gonna create one on OpenShift. Oh, by the way, Chris, remember I sent you that tweet?
Yes, the problem from last time.
Yeah, the problem from last time. So I actually wrote it down. So let me.
Good for you.
Yeah, let me grab this here. This little handy dandy command here shows you what platform you're running on. Jesus, I have so many notes. There we go.
There you go. The last one.
It's yeah, the latest, right? So if you run OC get infrastructure cluster-o JSON path and look for your platform spec and the type.
There we go. Oh, so you were doing capital platform.
Yeah, I was doing capital. Yeah, I was in camel case, or was doing camel, or wasn't doing camel case. I don't know. So
yeah, you had the wrong camel case.
Oh yeah, so Shari says that the wrong camel, the wrong hump.
Yeah.
Shari says that it worked for Azure because he was part of the tweet that I sent to him. So anyway, this is how you get what platform you're running on. So if you're running a cluster, if you're running on bare metal, currently it'll say platform equals none. So yes, I added a \n, so that way it'll
prints nicely.
Yeah,
look at you. So nice.
So in other words, this is dependent on either IPI or UPI and being platform integrated.
Correct.
You can still be running on vSphere or whatever using the non-integrated installer. Also
correct. Yeah, it'll say none. Yeah. So this is actually will tell you what integration you have, right? What integration to what cloud provider you have. So
nice.
Because correct, yeah, because you can do the non-integrated install, and it'll still say none, even though you're running on vSphere. So that's it's good to know. See, this is why we have Andrew here.
Right.
He'll have little things like that.
Just a not so pretty face.
Yeah.
You have a voice for radio.
Yeah, voice for radio.
Or face for radio.
Hey,
yeah.
That's why I did a podcast for you.
I know.
So yeah, so let's do even though I have a cluster running, we're gonna do we're gonna install a cluster from scratch, just because that takes the longest. So I'm gonna do OCP4, create a directory in there, and then I am going to show. So I have dig plus short. I have api.ocp4. My internal domain. Right. I have this already set up in DNS, and I have.
Apologies for the barking dog if you hear it, folks.
No barking dog. Oh, there it is. I have, and this is in my DNS server. And so, and this is already propagated, right? So this is the, what do you call it? This is the prerequisites that you need to have in order to do a vSphere IPI installation. So if you actually want to take a quick look at how that looks, I have my IPA server here. Cool. Let's go here, network services. Let's go to DNS. Yeah, and so I have.
You're such a good corporate citizen using the Red Hat IPA.
Yes, identity management. Yes. It's well, it's one of those things that
it's one of those things where it's like it's easier to do it with the paid product, right?
Well, yeah, it's like so much easier. I like when technology just gets out of your way, right?
Exactly.
It's like this takes like seconds to set up, and so yeah, so that's why just identity management is so much easier. So yeah, so I have these two entries of just API and the star.apps. They don't currently ping, right? I don't have this plumbed anywhere. So plumbed. Oh my God, I'm using an old term. Okay, I don't have this set up anywhere.
That's Solaris. Come on.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, yeah. I'm showing my Solaris background. So this isn't set up anywhere. Plumbed, I guess. I'll just own it. So this is just, you just need to have it in DNS.
So the big picture here is you're gonna kick off a IPI install or full stack automation install. And with the modern versions, so anything after what 4.4, 4.5, whenever we added IPI for vSphere, you only need 2 IP addresses, right?
Yes, correct. You only need 2 IP addresses.
Yeah, and those 2 IP addresses need to be in external DNS,
right?
And they need to be able to be reversed as api.clustername.domainname and star.apps.clustername.domainname.
Yes.
So that's the only prerequisite from a DNS and IP reservation standpoint. Everything else is done by DHCP.
Correct. Everything is going to be done. So all my masters and workers are going to be they're going to get their IP via DHCP.
And DHCP is required
for IPI. Correct. Yes.
Right.
So DHCP. So since we're doing vSphere IPI, DHCP is required for installation.
Can you say that again, just to reiterate?
Okay. So if you're doing a vSphere IPI installation, DHCP is required.
I say that tongue in cheek because I think we get asked that, I don't know, a dozen times a day.
Do you want me to type that in chat? Just in case
you might want to have a command, a bang vSphere IPI. And just have it posted up.
No, it'd just be bang Andrew.
Yeah,
bang Andrew. That's right. Yeah.
Any IPI, not just vSphere IPI. Any IPI requires DHCP.
Exactly.
Gotcha. So yes, yeah, and that has to do with like machine sets and things like that. So auto scaling, right? So in order for all that to work, you need some way to dynamically get an IP. I wish there was a dynamic way to get host configuration that people would make a protocol out of, or DHCP, right? Anyways, what was it?
There's a bunch of stuff that's being worked on with the assisted installer and all that other stuff. I'll see if I can dig up the GitHub issue that talks about all that to make it easier, but it's still IPI requires DHCP.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
So Waleed Shari asks, is it possible to enforce host names prior to install an IPI to know the hash pattern that it adds to the host names, right? Like,
yeah, I believe it's let's see, get nodes. So this is my current one. I believe it's always cluster name and then cluster ID, right? So the cluster name, cluster ID, and then whatever it is. So like master and then its iteration. So
yeah. So, and before deployment, you can find out what that name is going to be. So in this instance, Q2 MGL. If you do the create manifests or create ignition configs, it'll be in those files.
It'll be in the ignition configs themselves. Yeah.
I wonder. Well, I guess if we have time, I'll try it. I wonder. I can just change that to whatever I want it to be, right? Does it really matter?
We'll see. I honestly don't know.
I've been
asked a number of times if we can customize that, and my response has always been no, but I don't know. That would be interesting,
right? Because you can create the manifest and just do a find replace,
right? Yeah.
So let's hear this.
Like he's like, please try this.
Yeah. So create. So you choose the SSH key as always. You're going to right here, there's a little choose vSphere. So the vCenter endpoint, I have mine set as vSphere cloud. My username is admin. I always make a typo when Andrew's watching.
It's now a thing on the show.
It's now. That's right.
I deduct it from the check I send you for inviting me.
That's right. Yeah, exactly. You'll see it on the you'll see it in your statement.
Grammar correction services, typo correction services. What else? What else you got, Andrew?
That's right. So we got so since it automatically detected that I have one data center and one cluster, so it'll just automatically use those two. I haven't. Andrew, if I had more than one cluster, would it ask me which cluster to install on?
Yes.
Okay. So since I only have one, it just says, okay, well, I'm just gonna use that one.
Yeah, if there's no option, does it need to ask you?
Yeah, correct. Yeah, exactly. I'll just make an assumption here. Data store, I only have one data store. I mean, I guess I could use ISO, but that'll be really slow. So virtual IP for the API. I already forgot what I said. The API is 102, so let's do that. And then I believe 103. Yep, is the other one.
Yep.
So yeah, so I'm telling the installer I'm going to use this IP for the API and the ingress. Base domain is I have is cloud.chx. A cluster name. The cluster name, since I have this already in DNS, I have to choose this because it's going to be part of the lookup. So I have to choose the same one that I set on DNS. And then pull secret. So I have this here. Pull secret. All right. And then it generated those manifests for me. Right. So so here, if I just tree this here, so here I have two directories, one with installation manifest and one with OpenShift specific manifest, things like the kubeadmin password, the cloud cred secret, which is basically the connection that it's going to use to connect to vSphere, and also here machine sets, right? So I have the configuration for the machine sets for 0, 3 masters, and then I have a machine set for the worker, right? And there's only one. You may ask if there's 3. If you're going to have 3 workers, why there's only one? Let's take a look. Let's crack open that file. And it's because here in line 10 it says replicas equals 3, right? So if you look here, as Andrew said, the name here is set to worker. I guess this it'll prepend this to the actual node name. We'll see that later how that works out. But it has configurations like what you would normally see in a machine config. So and information on where to install this actual machine. So this is data center, data store 1. In this folder, right, it creates a folder. Note that it creates a folder with the name of your cluster, right? So your cluster name dash its ID. So
so Christian, you can modify this file, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Should you?
Should you? I don't know.
And that's what we're trying to figure out, right?
So, and why I'm asking that is because inside of the install config, you can customize, like, if I wanted to change from a 120 gigabyte disk to a 240 gigabyte disk, where's the appropriate place to set that? Yes, you can modify it here, but should you, or should you use the install config, the customization stanzas inside of there?
Yeah, I would use the install config customization stanzas, right? Because that is a user-facing tool. Whereas this here, although it'll work, it may or may not have consequences down the road. I would always do
unintended consequences.
Unintended consequences, right? So I'm always I always go through the layers, right? So like the user interface, if I can do it through whichever interface that I'm supposed to be pulling the levers, I'll do it there. And if I can't, I'll go one layer deep. So here I could definitely just choose the disk size, change the disk size and the memory size, and it'll actually create those, right? And here, the number of CPUs and the cores per socket, I could change those here. But in the install-config.yaml file is the preferred method to do it. So how do you create an infra node from this machine set, right? Same as you do as AWS. right? You're going to, you make a copy of this, and then you just modify the parameters that you need to modify. That could be a bit laborious. So, yeah, it's especially if you don't know, if you're like me, if you don't want to like do that all the time.
Right.
I do have repository. I did create this. I actually created this. I think Chris, you asked me, was it you? Someone sent me a message to say, hey, you used some script to set up your machine sets. Can you put that on like on GitHub somewhere? Maybe it was you. Someone asked me, and I go, okay.
No, I don't think it was me.
Well, because it was just sitting on my laptop. I'm like, maybe I should put it on GitHub. So I do have. I'll put this in the chat.
Yeah, please do.
I do have the script on how to create the machine sets, because it's always the same, right? In terms of like the things that you need to change is always the same. Everything else stays different, so it lends itself to having a template. So I have one for AWS vSphere, and please know my SLA is that I just did this really quick, and someone asked me to upload it. So,
your mileage may vary.
Your mileage may vary, right? But I am going to use it, and I'll do it live.
Because that's what we do.
Because that's what we do. We'll do it live. So let me get clone the MK machine set. And then here, let's take a look at the templates for VMware, right? So what we're going to do is we're going to create a machine set. I'm going to replace the cluster ID with the cluster ID, whatever that may be. I'm going to call this an infra node. So some of these things, pretty straightforward, right? Instead of it being labeled as a worker, I'm going to label it as an infra. That comes down here to this line here, right? So instead of it being labeled as a worker, I'm going to label it as an infra. Another thing I like to do is I like to add the taints, right? Because if you're going to run infra workloads, you're going to need to taint it in order, and then add those tolerations to those workloads that you want to move over. This is so that way you can, one, isolate your workloads, and two, for subscription purposes, you can only run a subset of workloads on the infra nodes, right? So again, you don't have to pay for masters or for infras during subscriptions. So, and then everything else here, some changes I made. I added, I gave this 16 gigabytes of RAM and 4 CPUs, right? The default, I believe, we saw on the worker was a 2x8, right? 8 gigs of RAM, 2 CPUs. Right. I created 4 here. And then I basically, it's always the same. So I just templatize this for a script here. So let's follow the directions. In the script, it says the cluster ID is the output of this, but I don't have a cluster running, so I have to look at the, let's look at the manifest here. Is it manifest or is it OpenShift?
It'll be in either. It's in,
yeah,
I know it's in the manifest, in the one that you were looking at before.
I got a 50-50 shot, right? 99 OpenShift cluster API worker machine set. Okay. And so the cluster ID is this guy right here. So I'm going to copy that. And then and then there we go. So I'm going to have change that cluster ID. Data center is set to data center. I know that. So data store is the data store. It's going to be different on yours, so that's the same here. And then vSphere.cloud.cx here, right? So you just basically change these to your settings, right? So cluster ID, the data store, the name of the data center, the name of the data store, and the vSphere endpoint, right, that you're going to hit. I'm not doing anything with AWS, so I'll just leaving those alone. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to do MK machine set vSphere, right? That's what it says here. And then the manifest should be in the out directory. So let's take a look at that. Out. Right. So just like just like the workers, same idea. I got the cluster ID dash whatever it is. So here's infra. My taints are there. The infra is there. So I'm just kind of just double checking here, making sure that the folder is correct. Looks correct to me. Let's see here. Secret data is the worker user data. That's the same whether you're running an infra or a worker. Cool. So what do I do with this file? So let's go back to the manifest. Is it manifest? No, it's OpenShift. And then I have, where's the worker? Worker machine set, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy. So this says here 99 OpenShift cluster API infra machine set -0. That looks good to me. And then here it'll, and that's it, right? So if you want an infra node at install, you basically copy the worker machine set and then edit it, so that way it'll be an infra node. If you want, you can use my script. It's pretty straightforward.
So Christian, why does this work? Right. What's happening in the background that we're defining a machine set and we're putting it into the directory, but why does that equate to something during install process?
So when during the install process, the Bootstrap node sets up a temporary etcd control plane, right? It's basically a temporary Kubernetes cluster, and we said this before on the stream that we use Kubernetes to install Kubernetes, right? So when that Bootstrap node comes up with that small version of Kubernetes, it'll start reading these manifests, right? So once the setup is all up and running, it basically is doing a kube apply of all these files, right? In the order that you specify, right? So usually have 99, right? You can have it, this hints to the fact that you can have certain things run before other things, right? So you can have like a 98, 97, 96, right? And so it'll consume these files at install and apply them. So that's why it works, right? So you can also do things in, that's just the same as anything, right? You can do things like
and effectively, so the next step is to generate the ignition configs. And what the installer will do when it creates the ignition configs is take all of these files and put them into the Bootstrap's ignition config. So that when the Bootstrap comes up, it recreates all of these files, and wherever it recreates them at, that eventually there's something inside of the Bootstrap that, like you said, just goes in and does an OC apply or whatever the equivalent is for all of them.
Yep, correct.
Yeah. Nice.
So we can see this in action by doing an OpenShift install create cluster.
Do you have a replica number defined for the infrastructure machine set?
I had 3, so
okay.
Well, we'll see, right?
Pretty sure you put in 3.
I'm pretty sure I put in 3.
Saying that.
Yeah. So it'll actually upload the Red Hat Core OS, the RHEL Core OS image. It found one in my home directory because I'd done this before. So it uses the cache when possible. So if I flip over to here, you see that another folder got created, and it'll go through the install process, right? It'll go here, upload this RCOS image, clone those, and it'll do whatever it is that vSphere does with them.
Nice.
So this is
part
where it's kind of magic to me, because I just kind of give it the vSphere endpoint, and then it just off it goes.
Yeah. So
almost.
If you were to look in the recent tasks, you would see it uploading the OVA template and that's what it uses to create that.
Here. There we go, right here, down here. Yeah, deploy OVF template, clone virtual machine. So it looks like it's cloning the bootstraps and the masters first.
Yep. Yeah, and it will, if the data store is VAI enabled, it'll use all the offloads and all that other stuff. Effectively, in the background, OpenShift install is using Terraform and just requesting, vSphere API calls. So it's not doing anything special. It's taking advantage of everything that's there.
Right.
I wonder if I have enough storage. Let's take a look. I didn't even look.
Oh boy.
Look. Data store usage on disk. Okay, so let's go to data stores. A warning. Well, I have, this is 300 gigabytes left. That should be enough.
So another thing that we get asked about somewhat frequently is what format the disks take when you're cloning them. And effectively, it will adopt whatever the... So when you create the OVA, when OpenShift install creates the OVA, if it's deployed on a block-based storage, it's lazy zeroed thick. That's just the default for block storage. For NFS, it'll be thin provisioned. And effectively, all of the VMs cloned from that will inherit whatever that disk format is. So just FYI, if you ever want to know what type of or how much capacity it's going to consume off the bat, that's how you can predict it.
Cool. All right. Well, hopefully I'll have enough for the workers and the infra nodes. I guess we'll see.
Time will tell.
Time will tell. So while that's going and the install in the background, we can actually do...
How much capacity do you have is a question in chat.
How much capacity do I have in terms of storage?
Storage, yeah.
2 terabytes.
About 2 terabytes-ish.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. I have 221 gigs free. So,
oh, that's all?
So we'll see.
It's actually a lot.
Oh, I guess I can make some room. I can delete my... here, let's do this. My Kubernetes.
What are you deleting?
I'm just deleting my Kubernetes 1.19.
Oh, well, yeah, that would free up a ton of room.
Yeah, power off. Because I can always just reinstall it, right?
Right, yeah.
I'm deleting Kubernetes for OpenShift. How perverse. Delete from disk. Yes. How do I delete this here? Well, I'll just keep it because I'm going to use it anyways. See if that freed up some space. Well, I have some space left. That didn't take much space away. Well, let me delete this vCenter appliance. No. So yeah. So yeah. So now I have this for a currently running vSphere IPI installation. It's almost exactly the same thing, right? So if you go to I go to my handy dandy script, okay, machine set, and then do, I need to get the cluster ID. And since it's a running one, I can actually run that command. It'll give me this guy. So let's go mk machine set, and then change, and then data center, data store 1, vSphere, right? I use my handy dandy. And then vSphere. And then, right, this creates the out machine set, right? So if I take a look at that, maybe I'll just add 1 replica. How about that? To save us some grief. So I have this 1 replica, right? Same idea, right? I have the taints. And the right here in the spec, I have the taints and the labels. So here, if I do, did I write anything? Did I? Oh yeah, I did. If I do an OC create, or is it apply? Either way, apply -f out. Right, if I do OC get machine set, right, it'll show that I now have an infra with the desired and the current. If I do to OC get machines, it gives you the the status of their provisioning, right? So you can actually have a watch here of this going, right? And then it'll go from provisioning to I believe provisioned or installed or something, and then running. I guess we'll see. I don't know what the next phase is. I think it's provisioned. So provisioning, provisioned, and then maybe running after.
I think
We'll
I thought it was running not ready or something like that.
Or something like that.
Yeah.
We'll see. Let's also take a look
The
at
whole
this
progression
here.
is about to be gone through.
Oh, I have red here. Let's go to the
I have red.
I have red. Oh, 183 gigs. So this is more entertaining than the actual infra nodes, right? Let's see if do I reach am I gonna reach critical mass?
Oh boy.
In order for this, let me make this bigger. So 2 terabytes, 183.
Yeah,
so
so
this
the default for that alert is 10% of free space.
10%. Okay, gotcha.
Okay.
So
it's amazing that you even know that, but thank you.
Yeah, see, this is why we have Andrew on.
It's a lot of years of administering vSphere.
Yeah. See, for vSAN node, this would also be thin. Oh, interesting. Okay.
Okay. Yeah.
Thank you, Robbie.
Yeah, VM's already provisioned, so maybe okay. Well, we'll see here. What does this guy say? Well, I still have some more to go. We'll see here. So if I go to the VMs here, it looks like the infra was created. This is provision, so it'll OC get nodes. Not ready yet, right? So it'll still taking its time. Let's take a look at what's going on here. Yeah. So what's going on here is that first Red Hat CoreOS boots up and grabs its configuration from the machine config API and applies that, whatever that is. And then it'll do an update. Well, first it'll install whatever it needs to install, right, to join the Kubernetes cluster. Then it'll go ahead and do an apply of the machine config.
So look at that VM's config back over in vCenter, and then go to, I think it's configure.
Okay, beautiful.
Got to get my learn on.
VApp options.
All right. Okay.
And then
awesome.
Scroll down there to the properties. So we have the 2 ignition config data, blah, blah, blah. So, and it may be because it just restarted, but normally what that'll have in it is a base 64 encoded value that ignition config that basically says, go find the master or the machine config API endpoint and pull down, in this instance, infra config. So when the VM turns on, it DHCP boots, it looks at that ignition, it reaches out to pull in that ignition config file, and then applies whatever's inside of there, which we can see in the MCP. So if you're to do, if you look at the machine config pool for the infra nodes, that's what it's in the process of doing.
Oh,
hey,
here.
It's running.
Up and running. Yep.
There you go.
So if I do OC get nodes, see if I can do this from memory. Node function.kubernetes.io equals /infra. Node role.
Yeah, I think it's role.
Kubernetes.io infra. There it is. So yeah, there we go. Status not ready currently. Was ready, maybe not anymore.
Well, the machine is ready, but the node is not.
Yeah, the node is not. So if I do, so OC gets MCP, the machine config pool. This is what Andrew's talking about, right? So this is the machine config pool. It's for workers, which even though I did an infra node, it does have the role of worker, so it will apply. It does apply to this machine config pool. It's going to apply this machine config, right? If I do OC get machine config, this guy, -o YAML, right? And all this stuff that needs to get applied to that machine config. So that's currently what's happening. And anytime there's a change, right? So anytime the machine config operator, anytime it senses a change, it'll reboot the node. And initially setting up the machine counts as a change. So it'll reboot a few times before it actually comes up here. So now it's ready.
So quickly, what's the difference between a machine and a node?
A machine is what is that? So a node is a running instance of Red Hat CoreOS that's joined to a cluster, right? A machine is something like this is something that makes more sense like in AWS. So like a machine is something like M4 X2, extra large, right?
It's a
M4
type.
It's like a type, right? So a node is a running instance of Red Hat CoreOS that's joined to a cluster. A machine is like a type, like I am of type this machine. And then even further down, a machine set, right, is a collection of those, right? I want 3 of this machine type.
So is it accurate to say that a machine, like if you were to do OC get machine -n machine API, I think, a machine is the object as represented to the underlying infrastructure?
Yes.
So whether you're running on AWS or Azure or IBM Cloud or whatever you're running on, that is that interface. Whereas the node is Kubernetes / OpenShift's
concept.
Yeah. Okay.
Right. Yeah.
And machine set is similar to like a replica set or deployment or whatever, however you want to conceptualize that. Same idea, right? Like here, you want 3, currently running 3, blah, blah, blah. Same idea as, replica sets the same way. And so let's see if this goes. We might make this here. Here, what do I have here? It looks like I might make it. So master, this is still going. So I already have the Infra node added to this cluster. So actually, let's run this experiment, right? So I think I'm going to run out of room, right? Because I still need 3 workers and 3 infra nodes, and I only have 300 gigabytes of RAM. 300 gigabytes of storage, right? So, so let's scale my currently running cluster. So first, so now that I have this infra node, how do I delete it, right? I have one of 2 choices. I can just delete the manifest, right? So the same thing as I did an apply to that file, I can do a delete. And that'll obviously just delete that machine. Or you can scale the machine set, right? That'll keep the definition, but it'll delete the node. So that way, if you ever want to bring that back, you can. So let's do that. So let's do OC scale. Oops, if I spell that right. It's a curse with you, Andrew, and I always spell it wrong. OC scale machine set.
The curse of Andrew.
Yeah, this guy here. Machine set this guy in OpenShift machine API. And let's do replicas equals 0. Right. So let's do OC get machine set that says I have 0. OC get machines. Right. The machine is gone. Right. Because there's no the machine set I want a 0 scale. And if I go to this configuration here, that node is actually gone. So it actually just deletes it from the environment, from the underlying infrastructure. So I can do the same thing with workers, right? If I need room, let's actually check to see how much did I gain back here. Oh, I didn't. It went down. It's probably because this is scaling up here. Yeah, it added the infra and the workers. I actually might be okay. Infra, worker. Interesting. But let's go on with this thought experiment that I still have here. If I do OC get machine sets for my current cluster, I have worker let's scale this down to 1, right? See what happens. OC scale, right? OC scale machine set. My worker, not 0. I want 1. And that is scald down to 1.
So a couple of questions for you, Christian.
Sure. Do it.
So what are there advantages to defining the infra node machine sets at install time versus as a day 2 operation?
I guess the advantage is that if you know you're gonna run different workloads on the infra node, that would be since you know you're gonna do that from day 1, you can do that in day 1. 2, it is also for your subscriptions. It also like if you're gonna just run just with workers, you're gonna have to pay for that compute in terms of subscription, versus if you're just gonna run on the infra nodes, you don't pay for that either. So it just gives you if you're already gonna run infra nodes, it just makes sense to just do it at install.
And is there a way to assign workloads to those infra nodes during the install process? Like normally we would put like the routers there or something like that.
Correct. Yeah.
Can you do that at initial setup, or does that forced to be a day 2?
That's a day 2. Currently, you can't do that as a at install, right? You have to do that as a day 2. Certain things are hard coded, as I found out, because I did try to run certain try to do it on install, but just certain things are hard coded. So, cool. So. This should so it looks like I got 2 down. Let's do OC get nodes. I got a worker. There we go.
It wastes no time in getting rid of those.
No, you gotta make sure you know what you're doing. Let's see if this messed up my my cluster here. OC get pods. See, we mess up things so you don't have to. Rep -b. Yeah, don't do it in your cluster.
That should be our motto. We mess up things so you don't have to.
You don't have to.
TV.
Yeah. That's right. That way you don't have to do it in your environment.
Right.
Deleted.
I would also expect I would expect that an OC get CO would show several of the cluster operators complaining at the moment.
Terminating running. It shouldn't be grep-v. Did I spell it wrong? Running. No. Completed. Grep-v. Don't show me. Hold on. What am I doing wrong here? You guys see it?
egrep?
Oh.
Oh, yeah.
There it is. Or grep-e, right? Capital E.
Yeah.
It is egrep.
Yeah.
So it looks like the router is pending to do something.
Yeah.
Not sure why.
So the default scale for the router is going to be 2. So it'll complain until you reduce the scale to 1 or you add a
you're right. You're right. Yeah. You would think though that it would run. Yeah, but you're right about that. OC get Ingress. See if I remember this. OC get cluster Ingress, something like that. OC get Ingress cluster.
Just do -a.
Yeah,
OC get Ingress -a because it's in the OpenShift router namespace or something, I think, or OpenShift Ingress.
So the OC get pods. So OpenShift. OC get. I'm gonna have to look this up now. I wanted to see if I could do it from memory. This is actually on the helper node.
OC API-resources and then grep for.
I can do that.
Ingress.
Yeah, let's do it that way. OC API resources grep Ingress. So Ingress is. So config OC get config is it ingresses?
Ingresses is
Ingresses is okay. Ingress controllers. There's the operator.
I wonder if it's.
It might be config. Wait.
Yeah.
OC get config ingress. It's one of those ingress operator. I know it's one of these. Ingress operator, networking. Maybe it's networking. Well, it's on the helper node. That I know.
When in doubt.
When in doubt, I know where to get it.
Right.
That's what it says. Is this here?
So years ago, when I used to do interviews for system administrators, I would always try and find the most esoteric, crazy, obscure, Linux commands to ask in-depth questions about.
Yeah.
Ultimately, what I wanted to find out was, are you willing to say, I don't know?
I don't know.
You want to say, I don't know. Yeah, exactly.
But the most important part is, I think I can find the answer here.
Right.
Maybe if I man this, maybe if I do this.
Yeah, maybe if I.
So I used to, my gotcha question was, LS has a lot of flags. Which letter does LS not have as a flag? And lowercase e is the only option. But most people get stumped by that, and they're like, hey, don't know, but I would man LS is what I'm looking for as an answer.
Well, yeah, man LS because it's in alphabetical order. A, B, C, D, F.
Nothing.
Oh, there's interesting. Yeah, the E's missing.
Mm-hmm. And I don't think that's the case on BSD Linux. So you could have potentially 2 answers to that. So it's kind of cool to test in that regard.
Okay, so it's OC get
ingress controller
default. Ingress controller default in the namespace. Well, OpenShift ingress operator. There it is. So you would edit this. Well, I mean, I have this patch command, but let's do it the long way here. Mm-hmm. Scale replicas. Yeah, replicas equals 1.
Right.
OC get egrep. Yeah, terminating.
Funny, it terminates the running one instead of stopping.
Yeah, I was just thinking that. Yeah, instead of for whatever reason. So it looks like this is still going. So that's still going. It looks like it got all this information here. You can actually take a look at what's going on during the install if you do export kubeconfig home switch CP4 auth kubeconfig. Right, so it'll be in the directory you're installing under the auth directory, and there's a file there called kubeconfig. You can see what's the big holdup by doing OC get CO. Looks like it's just still churning.
Okay.
Yeah, authentication isn't running probably because the API server isn't running.
So if the router isn't working, because authentication needs the external access.
Yeah, it's kind of a cascading effect, right?
Exactly.
It's it's like I can't authenticate. What's wrong with authentication? Well, authentication isn't broken. Authentication is actually fine. It's because the OAuth is down. It's because the router is down, right? So it'll have a cascading effect that way.
Which a lot of times when you're deploying a cluster, one of the first errors that you'll see is authentication isn't working, right? When you're doing like an OpenShift install or wait for blah, blah, blah. The first thing is you should check is whether or not the workers got deployed, or if it's IPI. If it's UPI, then you check to make sure the workers are able to connect, because without workers, it can't deploy the router, and without the router, it can't do authentication, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, it's kind of a... So it's kind of how deep you need to go in order to actually get the the symptom versus the actual cause, right?
Exactly.
So still going. If I do OC get nodes, I should be able to see. So I have an infra, worker, master. OC get machine sets. Yeah, it looks like I already have one. Yeah, provision, running, provisioning. So they're still, looks like they're still going. And then they're in the various stages of installation here. Let's look at my, it's still red. What do I have here? 400 gig, so it should be all right now.
You're off by a decimal point there.
47 gig. Well, now it's 63. So yeah, it's getting a little better. Come on, chug. So it's taking a little time. So let's take a little time in describing a little bit of what's happening when we do 440. Yeah, someone said 440s. No worries. Right, as long as it's not zero.
Yeah.
Let's take it. Let's take it some time to talk about how on an IPI installation, how the installer uses those IPs that you assign it. Right. So if you've done installations, whether it's the agnostic installer on bare metal or whether it's a UPI install on vSphere, there was a lot of prerequisites that you needed to handle, which is part of the reason why I wrote the helper node, right? So it's kind of like let's just get it all in one box so I can get through this install. But now with the vSphere IPI and with a Rev IPI and OpenStack IPI, if I'm not mistaken, it uses this the concept of the fact that you just need to have two IPs available and it assigned in DNS, right? And how does the installer actually use those IP addresses, right? So first is for the API, right? So if you remember, I did that dig command. What's that dig command? Dig plus short. Plus short. It's not.
That's right.
Have dig plus Chris short. Does that work? Does that work? That does not work. So that's another thing you can say to stump people. So what does dig plus Chris short do? Nothing.
Nothing.
It does nothing.
Absolutely freaking nothing.
Absolutely nothing. So this API, right? So what ends up happening is that when the three masters come up, they will what do you call those? A static pod gets assigned, right? So for those of you who don't know, let's do OC get nodes. OC debug node. Let's go into one of the masters.
Thank you for not SSHing.
Yes. Yes. In the future, it'll even be disabled. So that's not
right. Yeah.
Well, what's funny is, I come from an operations background, right? And there was always that internal struggle of I'm not going to give my developers SSH access to my servers. How far we come to now, we're taking that away from the admins even. So,
right.
So it's kind of
like exactly.
So like not even the admin gets to have it. So a static pod is assigned. So what a static pod is if you go to Kubernetes and you do a manifest, right? Things like etcd is a static pod that gets run. So a static pod is basically a kubelet
or a system pod.
Yeah, or a system pod. Like the API server, kube controller, MDNS, those sort of things. It doesn't need Kubernetes to run, right? It essentially just uses a kubelet it reads this manifest and it'll just run that container / pod on the node independent of Kubernetes, right? So it'll always just run on those nodes, right? Two of the things that you need to take that happens when you do an IPI install on vSphere, Rev, or OpenStack is that you have these two extra static pods, one called HA proxy, right? As you can imagine, runs HA proxy. And the IP address that front ends that is the keep alive D. right? So what ends up happening is that HA proxy ends up on one of the masters, and the IP address for that HA proxy is managed by keep alive D, right? So when you hit the API, you actually hit HA proxy, and then that HA proxy front ends the rest of the 3 masters, right? So you're not just hitting one API, you're still technically hitting all 3 APIs. It's just HA proxy decides. So you may be hitting the same, in this instance, master 0. So you may be hitting master 0 for the initial connection, but you're actually maybe talking to master 2, or it may actually send you on the back end because HA proxy is just running on the front end.
Let's take a look at that. So do a creek control PS or cry cuddle or
I cuddle, yeah,
however you want to
wanna
pronounce
call
it.
Yeah.
Again, I'm an equal opportunity offender with
that's right.
names.
Sweet.
Same.
So essentially what you're looking for in there, and you can grep for, or you can see it down at the bottom, keep alive D.
Do you want me to do an egrep? Egrep.
You don't. I mean, if you want to be fancy.
If you want to be fancy and see see if HA proxy is running, right?
It should be.
Yep.
Yeah. So effectively, and you can do a cry cuddle, cry control, logs on
cry
the
octal. Yeah, logs.
Oh gosh.
Specifically on the keep alive D, and you can see the logs that it's outputting to determine what its status is. So whether or not
7.
So whether or not it's the master or if it's one of the backup hosts. So what happens is with on-prem IPI specifically, so as Christian said, vSphere Rev or OSP without the Octavia integration and all that other stuff. On the API endpoint, the IP address is managed by keep alive D and VRRP. So if you were to look at that pod definition in the directory that you're in, so do a ls.
Well, for which guy?
Yeah. So look at the pod definition for keep alive D.
Oh,
or I guess
Novim.
it's a control definition.
Yeah.
So down in here, you'll see what is actually being passed into it. And if you keep scrolling down,
this guy right here.
Yeah, there should be. So there's the keepaliveD.conf. So I believe that's what we want to look at is the keepaliveD.conf. Etsy keepaliveD. Yeah.
Okay. So let's keep going. Liveness probe. No. Is it in this file? I don't think so.
So you want to look at that Etsy keepaliveD.conf file.
Okay. How funny. We do all this cloud native stuff, and in the end, it just ends up being a shell script.
Yep. Yeah. It's always
in the
bash.
end, when you drill deep down, it's just always a for loop, some script somewhere. So here's
so this is the definition. This is how it's managing that API virtual IP address.
Yep.
So we can see a couple of things in here. So starting at line 9 is the check script that it's using to determine whether or not the local host, you can see it's HTTP localhost, is healthy and able to participate. So if you scroll down, so it keeps going down. So there's API, there's Ingress.
There's a virtual IP definition, by the way.
Yep. So API, because we're on the masters, the control plane, API is the one that we want to care about at the moment. So a couple of interesting things here. So one, you can see on line 18 what the virtual router ID is. So remember that VRRP uses multicast. So for the broadcast domain, so your layer 2 subnet, you can only have, you need that VRRP ID to be unique. So if you have another one that happens to be using that, for example, with NSX, other IPI clusters that are deployed, you'll have a bad time.
You're going to have a bad time.
So other things that you can see in here.
Sorry.
Oh, it ended.
Yeah. What's the, I forgot the command to, for the timeout.
No, I don't know. So that could happen for 2 reasons. It could be timeout. It could also be, so remember this is a VIP. If for whatever reason it chooses to move that VIP to a different node, it'll reset your session, right? Because it'll disconnect. So anyways, what we're looking at here is, so this is how it determines which of the 3 control plane nodes. Basically, it goes through a VRRP election in the case of something happening in order to determine which one it's at. So now if we look at the HA proxy pod and the HA proxy configuration, which should be, I would imagine, Etsy HA proxy.
One would hope.
Oh, hey, look, it's there. Ugh.
But Vim's not.
Yeah. This is right. I'm gonna RFE to get Vim installed on Red Hat Core OS.
It's just an alias, at least. Jeez.
Yeah, give me an alias. Yeah.
Give me some.
So the VI, so Keep Alive D is running on each one of the control plane nodes, and it's checking to see if that endpoint is active and healthy, right? Which is the stats endpoint for HA proxy. If that's up, then it's participating in the router election. So if something happens, it will say, hey, I'm eligible. Do you want me to be the master? So the HA proxy that's behind that, we can see a couple of interesting things here. Starting on line 29 is really where we care about. And line 32 in particular is the one that tells us what's happening here. So our VIP is on, say, control plane 1. So that connection comes in, it hits the host with the VIP, which then passes it to this HA proxy. And this HA proxy says, well, I'm going to round robin across all of the active masters in the node. So basically it forwards that connection to whichever one happens to be next in its iteration. So it is highly available within the VRRP failover time, which can be a few seconds. And your session will get round robined across, each new session will get round robined across all of the different control plane nodes. And if you want to see where this is happening at inside of the code, it's in the, so you go to github.com/OpenShift/machine-config-operator.
I can't believe you memorized that. I'm impressed. I want to go OpenShift machine config operator. This guy.
I go here a bunch.
Yeah, you've already had it.
Yes, and then go to
I already had
the templates directory.
Yeah, it's a template which.
And then we're on a control plane. Yep. And then
template master container runtime.
So 00.
This guy here. Beautiful.
And we're on vSphere, so the bottom one. And then here's the templates that it's using when it deploys all of those files.
Yeah. HA proxy. There's a HA proxy and an HA proxy. Yeah. So in case the HA proxy wasn't enough, we doubled the amount of HA proxy for you.
So you may be wondering, how do I know which VRRP ID it's going to use? And for that, there is a command that you can run. I actually need to look it up because that one I don't have memorized.
No, oh, that's the script that we were already looking at. Ready Z. No.
When I switched from Fedora over to the Mac today, I lost all of my open tabs, and this was one of the open tabs.
Oh.
Manifest. So is the install. Oh, the install's done, by the way.
Oh, sweet.
All right. So, Christian, I'm going to send this to you in Zoom chat so that you can show it.
Oh, Zoom chat.
Code does not paste well into. Let's try here.
Oh man. Okay. Right cluster name, whatever that is.
Yeah. So whatever you're going to name the cluster. And you need to run it from a host with Podman accessible.
Gotcha. Okay. So here it'll do like OCP4 like that.
Yep. So you can see this is just it's going to pull an image from Quay. It's going to use Podman to execute it. And we're passing in, so it's the origin-bare metal-runtime config. It'll run the vr-ids commands. And at the end of this, it will spit out 3 IDs.
Interesting. Yeah.
So you can see the API is 222, which is what it was defined before.
Yeah.
So if you have other existing clusters running on your subnet, if you're concerned about collisions, this is how you can check and see what they are.
What they would be. Gotcha.
Or what they would be. Now, the only way to change this is to change the cluster name.
Yeah. So this actually, so you can have collisions because the installer will allow me to, because I can install OCP4, another cluster named OCP4, right? No, I can't, because then DNS wouldn't work.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
now VRP only allows 255 IDs, I think. The function that application is using, so the binary running inside of that pod, is further limited to, I think, 238 IDs because of how it does the calculation. And in the slides that I have, the ones that I created about all of this stuff, I have a link that like walks through where each bit of this is happening at. But just know that with the more instances of IPI that you have in the same layer 2 domain, so the same subnets, you do increase the risk of collisions. And there is a bug, or there was a Bugzilla created for this. The solution was exactly what we're looking at, which is here's how to tell if you're going to have a collision.
Check before you install, I guess, is the answer to that question.
Yep.
Look before you leap.
Look before you leap. Yeah. so that's the API, right? So
Yep.
that's how the API works, right? So we have static pods running on master, on all three of your masters, the whole control plane with keep alive D managing that IP. And I think Andrew did a fantastic job explaining how all that works. So the second IP is for the Ingress, which works a little different, right? So there's not an HA proxy sitting in front of the router, meaning there's not an HA proxy sitting in front of HA proxy, right? What happens here, and if I actually, if I do exported kubeconfig here, OC get nodes, right? I have OC get pods, grep, HA, no, Ingress. OC project, OpenShift Ingress, OC get all. I think I'm looking for deployment, right? So OC edit this guy here, deployment. So the way the router / Ingress, whatever you want to call it, runs in OpenShift, if you are running it on an on-prem installation, it uses something called a host port, right? So what a host port is, so there's different ways to run a deployment, right? There is a cluster IP, right, which uses the software-defined network. There is a node port, right, which just chooses a random port above 32,000, I believe. I forget the actual number. Between 32,000 and like 36,000, I don't know. It just chooses a random port between that range, and exposes that service on the IP of the actual node and that 3200 port, right? That's node port. There's also external IP, which is where you can just plumb the plumb here. There I go.
Good Lord, dude.
Where you to all my Solaris fans, I'm sure you keep using
exactly.
Plum. When you plumb an IP, and it'll use that IP, and then you'll have load balancer, which is which in the cloud installation, if you're using load balancer, that's when you get an ELB connected to your service, or if you're on-prem, you'll use something like Metal LB to get that same service, right? So now that we got a crash course in that, host port is actually, what it does is it takes the service and it binds it to the host's interface, right? So the host's IP address. So this is not node port. This is not, it actually is as if you ran the service directly on the actual node. So when the router runs, it actually is connecting to port 80, right? So if you try to run anything else on port 80 on that node, even though you're running in a container, it's basically you can't, because it's taking up. It's the equivalent of doing like a podman run dash p80 80, right? It's equivalent to doing that,
right? Yeah.
It binds it binds it directly to that port of that node.
And Christian, a question for you. So which interface does that bind to?
So the interface it binds to is all of them. So there you go.
Okay.
So yeah, let's look that up here. Best practice. This guy had a good. So when you bind pod to a host port, it limits the number of places the pod can be scheduled because each host IP host port protocol combination must be unique. Yeah, so it does bind to all of them. If you don't specify a host port and protocol explicitly, Kubernetes will use 0.0.000, right? So if you don't specify the IP, which it looks like we did here. Did we specify IP? We did not. This did not specify an IP. That means it binds to all of them. So you can specify a host IP in that same array, but if you don't, it'll bind to all of them.
And so the reason why I asked that is for our security conscious folks that also have some more complex setups. So for example, I have a second physical interface that's doing maybe storage connection or something like that. If your security folks go and run like an mmap or something like that on your network and it pops up and says, why is there something running on port 80 and port 443 on here? What's going on? Now you know why.
Yeah, you know why. That's right. So the reason I'm saying this is because just for that sheer fact, the installer / OpenShift only needs keep alive D to manage the IP address, because there's already
with the Ingress.
With the Ingress, correct? Yeah, with the Ingress. So we moved on for the API with the Ingress setup, right? It only keep alive D only needs to manage the IP because the router's running on whatever it's running. So whatever it ends up, right? Whichever worker it ends up, that router is already running there. There's a few things to keep in mind. So let's go back to where did that RSH go? Is it on the master? Yeah, or on the workers? It's on the workers, correct?
It'll be on a worker.
Yeah.
OC debug node. See, this is why we have Andrew here.
And actually, it'll be on any node that has the worker machine config applied to it. So in this instance, you would also have it on the infra.
On the infra node, yeah.
Yep.
Cool.
So question 1936.
So 1936 is the health Z endpoint for HA proxy.
Yeah.
And so we're getting ready to look at that.
Yeah. So here, if I go to etc manifest, no, etc Kubernetes manifest, there's a keep alive D here, right? So that's right. So this here is used for the IP for the Ingress, right? So it looks very similar to the other keep alive D, right? Because it doesn't really change all that. All that really changes is the what's that?
Well, Shari has a question. 80443, that's fine. What the heck is 1936?
Yeah. So we just said, 1936 is the API endpoint.
API endpoint, right.
Sorry, not the health check for the HA proxy.
For HA proxy. Okay.
So etc, where was I?
Keep alive D.
Keep alive D. That's right.
Sorry to interrupt.
No, that's fine. Set new, right? So, oh, that's crap. Set no new. So we're gonna have to deal without it.
I don't know what just happened here.
Yeah. So here, essentially, this is the check in Ingress is saying, if something's listening on 1936, then I am eligible to run on here. And then the virtual IP address is checking it's 103.
Yeah. So effectively, or the net result is keep alive D is running on every worker node in the cluster, whether there's 1 or 3 or 300 nodes. Keep alive D is running on all of them.
Mm-hmm.
But only a node that is hosting a router is or will participate in a VRRP election.
Yes.
So therefore, only a node that has a router will own the VIP, and therefore traffic comes directly to that VIP and goes directly to the router. and the router handles distributing traffic to pods after that.
So there is there's a slight difference between the API and the router implementation. With the API, there is an HA proxy sitting in front of the API services, right? That's running on all three control plane nodes.
Mm-hmm.
On the ingress part for the router, it's just keep alive D with the IP address, because we're already running HA proxy, right? The router is based on HA proxy. So we don't need to have an HA proxy in front of the HA proxy in this case. So that's the difference between the two. Oh, looks like there's
So FYI, and the reason why we went down this, spent the last 30 minutes going down this kind of a rabbit hole is because one, the docs don't do a great job of explaining this. And by don't do a great job, I mean, it's not in there at all.
Yeah.
So this can be a surprise to some folks that, for example, multicast is required on the subnet that you're using for your IPI installs. Router sharding basically doesn't work. I haven't tested it to verify, but I'm pretty sure it doesn't work. Therefore, if you have super high throughput or, tens of thousands of routes, things that you normally would shard a router for, not going to work. So what's the solution? So the solution would be UPI. Deploy a UPI cluster, put, a regular enterprise load balancer in front of the cluster. Alternatively, specifically for the Ingress side of things, use one of our partners' solutions. Citrix, F5, there's a number of others, including, I think, HA Proxy, the corporate HA Proxy, have certified operators that allow you to do that as a day two operation, where you're deploying a new, fully managed, router, in effect, running alongside the standard one that allows you to do that scale and all of those other operations that you would need.
Yeah, just like everything, it depends on your workload, right? So if maybe you don't have a lot of high throughput, this will work fine. If you have something like your like Andrew said, if you're doing route sharding, you definitely need to start thinking about the design and having a different installation method. Something that works for you, right? There's really no size fits all. So definitely think about what workloads you're running and what would work for you.
So I see there's a question about, can you limit MDNS multicast to only the OpenShift nodes? And to my knowledge, no, because it works off a multicast, right? So when it sends that message across the multicast address, which I think is 224.0.0.18 maybe for MDNS, doesn't really matter. Basically, anything that is listening on that will respond. So if we were to hop back over to GitHub, and you don't need to do this, Christian, if you were to hop back over to GitHub, you would see that there is an MDS responder and MDNS listener config as well. So that's when, for example, etcd comes up, etcd says, I need to find my peers. So we'll use MDNS to reach out and say, where's my peers? And then they'll respond across, using the MDNS mechanism. So I don't think that we can limit it, but I will fully admit that my understanding of the nuances of MDNS is not robust.
Yeah, no, I have a very limited understanding as well. So yeah.
So for whatever reason, I only got one worker instead of three, probably because of my storage situation. So.
So you might be able to check if you do a details on the node that's provisioning, it could tell you.
This is powered off. Maybe that's why. This one's powered off too.
Try and power it on manually. vCenter may give you an error message.
Oop, started. It says that VMware tools is not installed on this node.
Yeah, well, wait for it to actually start.
Okay.
Yeah, it always says that until it's up. Sorry, it always says that till it's up.
That's like a Cisco thing, right?
Like the actual. Yeah.
That's your networking coming up. It's like,
yeah.
is it up? Is it up, down, or
Shit.
down, up? Up.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
And so,
Jeez,
yeah.
100%
See,
accurate.
yeah. So you have your background. I have my background with Solaris. It's all coming out now.
So another
Everything comes
question
out,
for you,
man.
Christian.
Yep.
So with UPI, we use a private DNS that's only resolvable to the nodes. So effectively, it's only listening on whatever, to whatever IP address is on whatever subnet the nodes are on. MDNS doesn't seem to support this isolation. So I will say, and Christian, I appreciate your thoughts as well.
Yeah.
So MDNS is limited to the layer 2 broadcasting.
I would say it's layer 2 thing, right? So it's isolated in the same way. I would think it's more isolated, right? Because isn't DNS and you can route DNS, right?
Yeah,
in different.
But you can
right?
set up views, for example, in
correct. Yeah, in DNS, you can set up views,
so that it will only listen, respond to certain hosts. Whereas with MDNS, it is listening on there. So even if you can limit it and say only respond to these hosts, I don't think that we support modifying the MDNS config. So it would have to be something like an RFE. And we'd have to figure it out, way down in the underbelly of OpenShift.
Way down.
Way in the underbelly.
Yeah.
Oh, what's funny is I powered them on.
So check your, I think you can do an OC details or something like that on the node.
Well, I do OC get nodes, right? That only shows that if I do OC get machines.
Yeah, I meant machine, sorry.
OC describe machine. Let's just get this guy here. And then let's describe this guy and see what happened. I don't see anything that jumps out to me.
Yeah, it could also be in the controller or the cloud provider's logs if it's encountering some sort of error.
Oh, so LC get pods. Yeah, I never knew. Grep vSphere, right? Where is the core DNS? No, MD publisher.
No, you want machine.
Cloud?
Grep machine.
Oh yeah, yeah, you're right.
That'll be somewhere in the machine API namespace.
Yeah, machine API controllers. This guy.
Maybe.
API operator.
Or try doing OC get project, and then maybe cloud or something like that. Maybe you're right.
Cloud credential.
That's not the same thing.
That
contains my favorite project name, the credential minter.
The minter, yeah.
The minter.
Anyway, somewhere inside of there, and I can never remember. I thought it was in Machine API, OpenShift Machine.
It might be in there, yeah.
Somewhere in there is the logs for it talking to the underlying vCenter.
Yeah. Well, it called me a dummy. That wasn't nice.
What? To your
says,
face?
Hey, dummy. Yeah. It says, hey, dummy. Well, not even to my face. It just logged it. It just logged that I was a dummy. It's in one of these. I just don't know which one. Controllers, maybe. Well, there's four containers in this pod. So yeah, not sure what. Can't see anything. Oh yeah, let me go down this way.
So I responded
there we go.
in text.
It reconciled itself. Looks like.
Oh, nice. So I responded in chat, but it's probably worth bringing up as well. So Ingress and API require external DNS. Nodes and everything else uses MDNS in this scenario. So I just want to quickly highlight or point out that MDNS is only used for the internal services, so things like etcd, peer discovery. So it will still rely on DHCP doing dynamic DNS updates for the nodes when they pull their IP addresses for other things. That's one of the another somewhat surprising thing that sometimes we'll hear people talk about, which is if your DHCP server ignores the name and assigns it some random name or assigns some other name, maybe you accidentally used a reserved IP address or something like that, that'll get updated in reverse DNS, and then that name will start showing up inside of OpenShift. So even though it sort of assigns it a name when it does its the node config, it will actually adopt the reverse DNS name.
Which is why I said last stream, Chris, that reverse
Yeah.
is important. Reverse DNS is important.
Reverse is always important. Like
Reverse
doing
DNS always
DNS
important.
the right way is always important, right? Like,
Yes, do it right.
it's always DNS's fault.
Yeah, that's
Chances
right.
are because you haven't
Because you
read
didn't do
the
it right, yeah.
RFC. You know, I mean,
Yeah, read the
DNS is
RFC,
not
yeah, exactly.
DNS, I mean, that's how I literally learned DNS, and a lot of like other services early on in my day was just like, read the RFC. It's going to tell you exactly what it's expecting, etc. So, I mean, it is a complex thing, but the amount of people that misconfigure DNS because they think they have an understanding of it is very high.
Yeah, it's pretty high. Especially things like there's what's the RFC? Because before we required SRV records, but like if you put a C name, it works by accident, but you're not supposed to, right? Like you're supposed to. It's supposed to be an A record, not a C name record. So there was
the root Apex stuff is all dependent upon what DNS server you're running and everything else. Right?
Yes,
like
correct.
Whether that can be whether that can be a C name or an actual A record or whatever. But we had the hard requirement of A name and still worked with the C. So that's not surprising to me because that's how software should work.
Yeah, sure.
But
we'll make your crappy decisions work.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh man,
nice.
So yeah, there we go. You can do OpenShift installed destroy cluster because I need storage. Hopefully this is the right one. Yes, it is. Yeah. This will
minor detail.
We'll see. Well, because I'm like testing on one, but yeah, see now it's gone. So
another thing to note with UPI and IPI, it configures the installer will automatically configure the in-tree dynamic provisioner for storage, right? So if you're to look at your data store, there's a folder inside of there that contains any VMDKs and for those PVCs or PVs. The problem is there's no way of seeing which of those is related to what. So if you don't delete those before you destroy the cluster, you'll end up with a bunch of orphaned files in there.
Yeah, a lot of
kubevals.
Yeah, it'll kubevals. Yeah, it'll be in here, and there's a lot of like this stuff here. Like I don't know what this is. We don't know. Dynamic PV.
Yeah, so you can map it back. You can see what cluster it belongs to.
Yeah,
and I go from there. But yeah, it's a
this is my current running cluster,
manual, or you're going to have to create some automation to take care of that for you, as opposed to just going in and doing a OC delete PVC -A.
I'm gonna fix my cluster here. Namespace.
And to Waleed's point, yes, CSI. The CSI plugin does make it much easier. Just keep in mind that the vSphere CSI plugin is supported by VMware. So today it's a day 2 operation to deploy that, and then support comes from VMware.
There are Bugzillas to ensure that OpenShift installed destroyed cluster drops all PV. I think this is this is Ego Alter. There are BZs, Bugzillas, to ensure that OpenShift installed destroyed cluster drops all PVs before killing the cluster, so the VMDKs should be deleted. If not, there should be a Bugzilla filed for VMware.
There we go.
Rev had a similar issue. Bugzilla changed that. A Bugzilla issue fixed that. So yeah. I'm assuming I read BC as Bugzilla. That's correct.
Yeah, I assume so as well.
Yep.
Yeah.
So let's do gotta see this OC get persistent volumes. Yeah, so I have all of these, and I don't know how to count. Is there a count here? 17 items.
Don't know how to count.
WC-L 17. There you go. So I deleted the other one, and those cube vaults did go away. So
Nice.
thank you, Ego Alter 67.
I don't know that you had any volumes in the other one
I probably didn't.
since it was
But-
brand new.
Yeah. Would it have? Oh yeah, no, not even for the registry. So the registry, that's a day 2 thing. So yeah, no, it would have 0. You're right.
Yeah.
Cool. All right,
Sweet.
so that's all I had. I don't know if there's any questions or if Andrew, you wanted to cover something else.
I'm just here for moral support. I'm here
Yeah.
to
Here
make
for
sure
moral
that
support.
Andrew is the curmudgeon for support.
Yes, that's right. Oh,
The cuddly curmudgeon of support.
that's right.
I love you, Andrew.
So yeah, right. You're great, Andrew. So look at that. Now I have 800 gigs back. All is so. Actually, my question to you, Andrew, is that why doesn't it use thin provisioned disks?
So it's the VMware default.
Okay.
For as long as I remember, all the way back to ESX3, block storage has always used the lazy zero thick as the default.
So is there any way in the OpenShift installer to tell it to use thin provisioned lazy zero?
No, I think there's some RFEs open, at least one for that,
Okay.
because it is possible to specify in Terraform, but I don't believe it is